Good evening, everybody. This is Lefty with Doc and Lefty, sitting in the captain's chair. I want to welcome you to the Tuesday, January 22nd broadcast of the Doc and Lefty show. You're probably wondering what I'm doing here, sitting in Doc's seat. I'm usually across the table from him. Well, the Doc is on vacation. He's decided that there are things more important to his time than bringing you the latest news, politics, and whatever the heck else we want to talk about on a weekly basis. And he went and took himself off to Hawaii. And so leaving us here stranded in this cold snap. Now, I wasn't all that envious of him when he was telling me he was going to Hawaii back a week and a half ago and it was 65 degrees. But now that I think it got up to about 10 degrees today, I'm a little bit more frustrated with him. He texted me a couple of nights ago. And this just to kind of show you what kind of a co-host I have here and what friend I have here. He texted me a couple of nights ago a picture of the tropical fruity drinks that he and lovely friend of the show, Amy, are enjoying at their resort in Hawaii. So, but that, the news doesn't stop for one man's vacation, and the good doctor doesn't stop for one man's vacation. Hey, Doc, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you see me?
Oh, there he is. We got it to work.
Tropical vacation.
Ladies,
tropical vacation.
Just so that you know that we weren't lying to you, folks. We got the good doctor Patrick Petroche calling in on Skype to get some video and some audio for you from his Doc. Where are you located?
I am in Lahaina at a secret location.
But you just told us.
That I just told you, I'm in Lahaina. But you don't know where it's Lahaina. But as you can see, right over my left shoulder is the ocean, the beach, everything else. I'm sporting a new look. I've gone native.
I see that. I see that.
Yeah, how you like it?
Well, it's definitely it's a new look. So now, when Doc and I were talking about what we wanted to discuss today, first of all, I'm going to put it to you, sir. Did you watch the inaugural yesterday?
I did watch part of it. Out here in Hawaii, since they're big fans of the president,
yes, they are.
They have covered it. I mean, ad nauseum. There is nothing but inauguration 24/7, even today.
Well, I think that we can all agree that the inauguration, no matter what president, the pageantry, if you're a political person, you like political kinds of stories, that inauguration day, it only comes once every 4 years, and it's a pretty fun event. I know that 08 was pretty special for a lot of Democrats, especially a lot of folks of color. 2012 or 2013, I guess, today or yesterday's was really, really historic. I think just from a lot of people's perspective that you had a two-term, the third president in the last 7 or so years from the Democratic side to be reelected, and it happened to be the first African-American president who got inaugurated on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. A lot of storylines there. Yes,
a whole lot of storylines. I thought, what kills me is how everybody focuses on what Michelle Obama was wearing. And, no, it wasn't addressed to my taste, but, for crying out loud, give the girl a break. She's trying to do her job. She's trying to look good. She hired a pretty good fashion consultant and made that dress especially for the inauguration.
Are you talking about the red one?
The blue one that everybody doesn't like. Yes, she wore a very, very striking red dress.
That was... I got to tell you, the Commander-in-Chief's ball, I like that dress a lot better than the one from 2008, but that's because I'm a sucker for a lady in a red dress.
Oh, yes, yeah. Well, they wrote an entire song just for you.
They did.
Lady in Red.
They did. And so, no, I the criticism of Michelle Obama, and a lot of people coming out and making snarky comments about her bangs and things, it just, honestly... It's a little bit, and I'm not going to go off and say that there's something that people don't like about Michelle Obama, but I feel that the sort of the comment, because people make comments all the time, and especially in 2013, the way that the internet has consumed pretty much everything in our lives, you get a lot more of that stuff. I feel like than you did even 8 years ago when Laura Bush was becoming the first lady for the second time around. And it does feel a little bit different, but I have a feeling that's going to be that way going forward, given the technological advances that we've been having in this country.
Well, and absolutely. And I can tell you, I was at Reagan's first inauguration, and that was a spectacle. It was really mind-blowing, and it wasn't nearly as fancy as what some people had talked about with either Gerald Ford or Jimmy Carter at that time. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you that the floats, the parades, the Marine Corps, those boys always have it together. And again, my hats off to them for leading forth in this parade that they're in. And trying to do the stars. Didn't Beyonce do the Star Spangled Banner?
She did. So the other controversy from that is, do you think actually, before we get into that, a couple other things about the actual inauguration, because there are some questions that people were asking that I saw online, people asking me about it. I didn't know until a couple of days ago exactly everything that was going on, but a little bit of inauguration trivia, Doc. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So you heard that they swore the president in twice.
Yes.
Why they have to do that?
One was official and one was for the pageantry.
Go ahead.
The way I remember it, because that's kind of a blindsided question. I know you caught me on that one, but as I recall, the president has to be sworn in within a certain number of days from the election, and so one was for the official. And the other one was for the pomp and circumstance.
Well,
that's how I think.
That's partially right, and I'm going to just confirm this because this is what I had discovered, and I wasn't even sure if this was. This is actually
you look good in headphones.
Hey, thank you very much. So, what I will say though is there's a legal reason. January 20th. Is the date set out in the Constitution. Noon on January 20th is the date that the Constitution specifies for the president to be inaugurated, regardless of what day it is. So he had to be inaugurated by law on January 20th. And to get the sort of, I guess, requisite grandeur for the event, you can't have it on a Sunday because not everybody's going to be able to make it. People are going to want to go to church. People are going to want to do other things on the weekend. So they had to inaugurate him in private and then have the big blowout the next day. Who was the other president they had to do that for?
Oh, yeah, I don't know that.
That would be your buddy Ron Reagan.
Oh.
Ronald Reagan was inaugurated in private as well on January 20th and then had the big shindig the next day.
Well, let's hope Obama gets the economy turned around like old Ron did.
Well, he's working on it. I wish that there were some more people like Tip O'Neill on the Republican side for Obama to work with.
Well, yeah. Well, you can't call what they did working together. When I was out there, it didn't matter what Reagan said. Tip O'Neill said no.
I feel
it wasn't until the tax code of 1986-87 tax package. It wasn't until then that Tip O'Neill even started to drift that way, and the only reason he did is because Teddy Kennedy had developed a respect for Ronald Reagan by that point. So they all got together and decided, well, all right, we'll make some concessions.
Well, it's certainly not what you
didn't.
Oh, sorry about that. We're going to have issues with that all night with the Skype feed from Hawaii, but we're coming up on our first break. And Doc, I will say it's good to see you. And it just shows the dedication to this show that you have, that you're willing to call in from your vacation, because you know that I sure as heck wouldn't. But we're gonna come back in a minute or so and talk about what we're going to talk about, the Republican anti-democratic plan to steal the election from Democrats, and a lot of other things that are going on. So come back in about a minute or so. This is Lefty, Doc, and Lefty at Webcast One Live. Thank you.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
It's like they want to get hit.
Need a body shop?
Minor Wreck Express saves you time and money.
Welcome back. This is Lefty with Doc and Lefty here on Webcast 1 live in beautiful, ebullient downtown Des Moines. I don't know if you can actually describe a downtown as ebullient, but I just did. We got Doc on the phone and on Skype.
That?
What's that?
I'm not even sure how you spell that.
It's spelled with letters, sir. You have Dr. Patrick Bertroche on the phone line and on Skype from Lahaina, Hawaii, on his vacation, coming in because he was so incensed and outraged at the all music show I did the last time that he gave me the control of the captain's chair, that he said, well, there's no way we're doing that hippie bull crap again, so I'm going to call in from Hawaii and make sure that I keep control of this thing.
I like that hippie bull crap. I thought that was pretty good stuff.
Well, I think you're fitting in pretty well with the beads in your braids there, sir.
Oh, yes. Now, the problem is Frank, our producer, just told me I need more light on my face. He is the first person to ever tell me, hey, we need to be able to see you better.
Well, there
everybody else goes, can you cover up?
So here's my question. Here's my one question. So I see that you're wearing a Hawaiian shirt, which if anybody knows you is a pretty shocking development. But I gotta ask you, did you have your own carry-on just for your Hawaiian shirts? Because I know that you probably need a U-Haul to get them all down there.
Well, I went with a different strategy this time.
Yeah.
I just packed as light as I could and brought a bib.
That's a good plan. I didn't respond to your text message of their beautiful tropical drinks that you sent to me because I was so envious of you. But we've been talking back and forth, during the week while we're kind of planning the show about some of the things to talk about, and there's a lot going on. The inauguration, obviously, we had to talk about that a little bit, and we'll get back to some of the lighter moments from the inauguration a little while later. But the one thing that has been sort of not reported nearly as much has been some of the rumblings in the state GOPs and some of the interviews that the Republican National Committee Chair Reince Priebus has given about this Republican plan to change the way, in some of the states, electoral votes are allocated based more on House district rather than winner take all, the way it's been done ever since the first election, with the exception of a couple of districts that we can talk about. Now, Doc, I don't know if you've been following this very much.
I have.
You have or you haven't?
Yes, I have.
You have. And so I guess I'll kind of, what's your take on it?
Well, the truth is this is not a new argument. This is nothing new that's occurring. The only difference is it's the Republicans talking about it instead of the Democrats. The truth of the matter is that, as you and I both know, they set the Electoral College up because you had to send a representative way back when. Not everybody could go to Washington, D.C. So they would send their representative, their Electoral College vote, to Washington, D.C., and then they would vote then. And there was never a guarantee that the person that said they'd vote for you would vote for you when they showed up. Most states have set it up so it's a winner take all. The problem is with our advancing technology, I think the Electoral College is something that may be seeing, a revision. I'm agreeable to having the states split the Electoral College votes up. It's similar to what the Democrats have called for previously. Some have called for a complete destruction of the Electoral College. Others have have introduced bills similar to what the Republicans are trying to do now.
But see, this is at a state level. The difference is, first of all, I've never heard of any Democrat thinking that they want to change the allocation of the number of votes based on House districts, number one. Number two, I think that you and I can both agree that the Electoral College is outdated, outmoded, and irrelevant in 2013. But
yeah.
I mean, that's just it's one of those sort of old school anti-democratic mechanisms from the 18th century that we just don't need. I mean, it's in a similar way that our own federal Constitution is an anti-democratic document in that it sets things aside to make it more difficult to vote on them.
We are a republic. You and I agree on that. We're not necessarily a democracy.
Well, what I mean by this shouldn't be a shocking thing. The Constitution was set up expressly to be anti-democratic for certain things like speech and the Second Amendment and the rights of prisoners and things like that. That we set those aside and we set certain provisions in the Constitution aside so that they can only be changed through amendments. And amending the Constitution is you need more than just a simple majority. However, putting the Electoral College as a constitutional mechanism at this point, I think, because of some of the things that have happened, like the election in 2000 and some of the stuff that's talked about with this Republican plan, I think it's now time to start actually drafting some language to get the Electoral College taken down through an amendment process.
Well, I don't think it's time quite yet to scrap the Electoral College. I know that you believe in technology much more than I do. However, if the Department of Defense can't keep their technology safe, how are we going to be able to keep voting technology safe?
Well, but see,
if there's a concern about illegal voting, then I think there should be a mechanism in place before we start getting rid of the Electoral College to address those issues.
But the Electoral College has nothing to do with illegal voting. The Electoral College isn't a safeguard against voter fraud or anything like that. The Electoral College... Go ahead.
Well, but I believe that it can act as that. If you have a bunch of Ron Paul supporters, for instance, and they show up the Electoral College and they go, you know what, we don't like Mitt Romney, we're going to vote for Reince Priebus or whoever. That's a safeguard. You have people that are pledged to this, and I understand that winner take all. I've never liked that approach. But the problem really boils down to how are you going to reform it? Do you want to do away with it altogether and have a shock to the system, or do you want to take it step by step? And I believe the Republicans are taking it step by step to make it so that it is much more relative than just a straightforward, numbers vote.
Well, the thing is, and we'll have to talk about, we're coming up in a few seconds on another break, but the issue, the danger of a Ron Paul supporter coming in, that's only an issue in the primary, because by the time the Electoral College is even an issue, is the general election, both parties already have their nominee. And so there's the legal process. It would be impossible. An elector to the Electoral College could, I suppose, in conscience say, I'm not going to cast my electoral vote for Mitt Romney. But he can't do that. He or she can't do that. It would be against the law to do something like that, or at least the rules of the Electoral College itself. And so that particular part of it, Doc, I'm just going to have to disagree with you. I don't think that's really an issue.
All right. Well, we'll see you back after the break. Take us out.
Well, thanks for joining us tonight, January 22nd, 2013, Webcast 1 Live. My name is Lefty. This is the Doc and Lefty Show. You hear us every 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock hour on Tuesday, coming to you from Des Moines, Iowa. We're going to take a short commercial break and see you in a minute.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
Welcome back. This is Lefty with Doc and Lefty here on Webcast One Live every Tuesday from 6 to 7. Join us if you please. We got the phones closed down because our friend, mentor, commandant, and overall dictator for life, Dr. Bertroche, is on vacation in Hawaii, and he is jamming up all 6 lines that we have here in the studio so that he can join us from Skype and on the phone line. So, Doc, before we get back into this whole electoral thing that you nasty Republicans are trying to fleece everybody with, why don't you tell what you've been doing on vacation?
You might need a few seconds. Ask that again.
So I guess the delay is getting the better of me. I had a really good question. So, Doc, before we get back into the electoral thing, what have you been doing on vacation the last few days?
Well, not a whole lot. That's why it's called vacation. Now, the part of our technical problems is because we have the beautiful scenery behind us.
Yes.
It's flushing out my face. So we've tried to bring over lamps, but we don't have enough cord to make it to the one outlet that works. So I'm kind of leaning forward. Hopefully, I don't scare the small children. I haven't been doing much. Laying out on the beach. We drove around Maui a little bit. It was all right. Went and got my beads done today. I don't know if you can see, but I got a little, Bo Derek thing going on with my hair. So
it's really, really sexy. So anyway, getting back to this this issue, I just kind of want to go over some of the proposals. The Republican National Committee is introducing this proposal. Well, at least it's kind of floating it around the states, and it's picking up in momentum in a lot of blue states like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania that have been blue but are now in complete control, most of them, with a Republican governor and a Republican state house. They're saying they want to apportion these electoral votes not by sort of a winner-take-all the way it's always been, but more attuned to the different House districts that they sort of represent. Now, and the issue for the president, in this, if it had been in place in this last election, the fear is that the president, even though he got a majority of the popular vote, would not have seen that reflected in his really large electoral margin, because a lot of the House districts, according to the Democrats, were gerrymandered to, even though Democrats, and this is undisputable, even though Democrats won a majority of House votes this year, they did not retake the House because safe House districts went back for the Republicans. And so you would see an instance where even in a general election where the president won a state with the majority popular vote, because he didn't win the popular vote in key pockets, in key Republican districts around the state, he wouldn't get all of the electoral votes, and that's what the Democrats are up in arms about.
Well, I don't think it would have made a difference in this election. Romney succeeded in 2 different things: alienating the moderate voter and angering his conservative base. And truthfully, you can't do that. And I don't think, even if we'd have had these proposals in every state, I don't think it would have changed the outcome all that much. It would have been nearly the landslide that it looks to be electorally.
Well, the president did win by 5 million votes. That's kind of a lot.
Yeah, it's kind of a lot, but the truth of the matter is if 5 million votes, don't get me wrong, is a lot. But when you consider 130 million people through cast votes, that's not a lot of margin. That's one of the problems with our system. We've talked about that a lot. Is
yes,
you have what guy do you want screwing your life up the least? I mean, that's the guy who you vote for.
Well,
my issue with this is we already have 2 states to do it. One's a blue state, one's a red state, and it really kind of depends on locally what you want to have running your state. It's very, I mean, Iowa is a very, bipolar state. I don't know how else to say it, because we have a very staunch and committed liberal and a very staunch and committed conservative. And we have a tendency to either elect very bad liberal governors or very moderate Republican governors.
Well, I mean, I'll correct you there. I mean, I feel like, I've been a vocal critic of Chet Culver, the last Democratic governor, and I make no secret about that, Doc, as you know. I don't think that you could actually argue with any credibility that Tom Vilsack was a bad Democratic governor.
Well, I think you can, because he came into the governorship, had, I don't know, I can't remember how much the money was, close to $1 billion. $1 billion in surplus, and in 18 months didn't have any left, right? That's why, I mean, I was working for a community mental health center that suffered because, well, suddenly we didn't have that extra money. He just started spending it right and left. And that's how we got into the cycle of spending and borrowing, spending and borrowing.
Well, but see, he still had a Republican legislature for a lot of his 8 years in office, and they're the ones who do the budget.
I'm with you. I'm not saying that he was alone in it.
I mean,
he's the guy that led the charge in it.
Well, I've been a critic of Governor Vilsack on a couple of different things as well that we don't necessarily need to talk about because it makes me sound really, really bad. But his defense of the 2,000-foot rule, for example, I criticized. I was actually able to talk to him face to face about that back after it got passed. But I think that you're right about this. I mean, I think one of the reasons why this electoral scheme is not reported as much is that it hasn't been getting a really on-fire reception from the state Republican parties, because they realize that any sort of, and this is why why electoral change is so difficult in this country and why it was set up to be that way, that political decisions based on popular vote is at the whim of the majority. And so the House districts that are safe today will maybe one day be flipped. I mean, you had a House, for example, you had a House district that had been held by a Republican since the Civil War up in upstate New York get turned over to a Democrat for 2 years because the candidate that was run out of that district was so terrible and not pleasing to any constituent really in that entire district. So the political wins are so sort of they shift so much that something like this, which would could potentially, if it's taken to its logical conclusion, have long-reaching political effects, I think is going to makes it even more difficult to change. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's one of these things where like the Senate is supposed to be like the saucer in the cup, right? The cup is the House that responds heatedly. The saucer, the Senate, is supposed to be keeping things calm.
Right.
That's why I think the Founding Fathers set it up this way as a republic, understanding the nature of humans. And from my perspective, I think some change to the Electoral College to reflect more of the people's will is something that's going to be a benefit. The thing is this isn't going to just benefit Republicans now. This is going to benefit everybody at some point in the future.
Well, so you don't think that the general election was a reflection of the people's will, though?
Not as much as what the Electoral College reflected. I mean, you're reflecting nearly 51% of the votes. 52%, was that it?
That's right. Yeah. Mitt got like 47%.
Yeah, you have 47% going, yeah, we don't want that. That's not a mandate.
Right, but that's democracy, though.
That is democracy when you get it down to one of two candidates. And from my perspective is, that margin was not reflected in the Electoral College.
But I guess, but see, that kind of goes back to my point that the Electoral College is outdated, doesn't it?
And I would agree to some extent that it's outdated. I get this argument all the time from lefties about the Second Amendment. Well, the Second Amendment's outdated. Well, let's just face it. Everything in the Constitution is outdated. It's an old document. That is what we all agree we are going to do as Americans. I explain this a lot overseas. America is not an area. It is not really a country. It's an idea.
Right.
And that idea is codified in our Constitution.
Exactly.
And the problem is at what point do you go, well, that's an old idea? Technically, they're all old ideas.
Well, here's my question to you then, because I feel like you're sort of arguing the Electoral College on both sides a little bit, because at the same time that you're arguing in its defense, you're saying that, and kind of propping it up, you're saying that the margin of victory that the president enjoyed in the Electoral College isn't reflective of the people's will as a population. And so here's my question to you: given that there's an apparent such a disparity between what the people want and what the Electoral College reflects, what needs to change to bring those more into line?
Well, back when Reagan had his landslide against Mondale,
right?
I knew, since I was, I worked on the campaign. I helped out when I could. I had just started my college career at that point. I just graduated high school, or was graduating high school when he ran for a second term. At that time, we knew it was going to be a tough fight. And if you look at the numbers, as far as the straightforward popular vote, they were similar, a little bit worse than McCain-Obama. Just a little bit worse. However, the Electoral College had him Mondale only winning Minnesota. And at that time, I thought, the Electoral College should be more reflective of what popular sentiment is. Not completely representative. It still needs to act as a buffer and as a cooler.
Right.
But not completely representative of complete democracy. That's why it's a republic.
But see, but Doc, I'm looking at the results here, and President Reagan received 59% of the vote to Mondale's 41%. So that's no one. I mean, you can't get 60% of Americans to agree that the sky is blue. That's a pretty significant majority, wouldn't you say?
Well, my numbers are obviously off. I didn't quite expect to get into the Reagan numbers, but maybe it's more similar to Reagan and Carter, or because that was pretty much a landslide as well.
Reagan-Carter was not a landslide.
What?
Reagan-Carter was not a landslide. Reagan-Carter was closer to what George Bush did to John Kerry in 2004.
So there's different angles on this subject, right and left.
Yep.
And my perspective is I think that you ought to split up. I don't like the winner take all. I don't think a lot of people like the winner take all. When Republicans are surging forward with a super popular president, Democrats don't like it. They complain about it all the time. And it's just a flipping of the switch now.
Well,
now we have a super popular, President Obama, and, Republicans don't like it. This is not a new issue, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere, just like the Democratic proposals never go anywhere.
Well, I feel like the Democrats had a weird point, well, not a weird point, had a good point back in 2000 when they had a popular vote going to the Democratic candidate and the electoral map going to George Bush. I feel like that was more sort of an up in the air kind of thing. What bothers me about the line that I hear from a lot of Republicans about this stuff now, like to discount the whole issue with the electoral plan or scheme or whatever. I don't think it's going to happen. But you keep hearing this stuff about the president, that there's something illegitimate about his presidency, and this isn't something against Barack Obama personally. You hear this from the right all the time, but here you had only the third Democratic president to be reelected to a second term since FDR basically, but only the first Democratic president since FDR or since LBJ to receive in both terms the majority of the popular vote. Clinton didn't do it. He only got like 47% when he was elected in 92. only LBJ was the most recent Democratic presidential candidate to receive the majority of the popular vote, more than since Carter. And it just, the fact that Barack Obama won the majority of the popular vote and the Electoral College vote by such a wide margin, I feel like that in and of itself should end the whole illegitimate term argument. Done, period.
Well, I have 3 points about that. One, I don't think any of the Republicans that I know and talk to, or even the conservatives, or even the birthers, are going to say, well, Barack Obama won this election illegitimately.
You hear that all the time, though.
Well, no, I don't know where you're hearing it from. I don't hear it. Right? We're on the Republican side. What we hear, what I keep hearing is not that he's been elected illegitimately, but that there was a lot of voter fraud. Right? That's my first point. Number two, all I got to say is George Bush. We had to deal with 8 years of George Bush stole the election. All right? That's all I got to say. That blared loud and long for 8 straight years out of the liberal media, out of the non-Fox media. 8 years of that. Well, the bottom line is the issues from the conservative side don't really have anything to do with the Electoral College. It has to do with what we perceive as voter fraud. And one of the cases we point to is California. How can California have been such a strong Republican hold, bastion, electing Jerry Brown and electing Ron Reagan to the presidency, yet 20 years later, we don't even bother to advertise in the presidential campaign since 2004. So it's not even a 20-year switch, it's less than a decade. Well, how does that happen?
Well, in which state are you talking about?
California.
California hasn't voted for anybody since Ronald Reagan. They voted for the Democrats ever since then.
That's my point.
That's 30 years.
Yeah, that's my point. So how does it? So from our perspective, part of the it's not even illegitimacy. It's that when you count up the votes at the end, how many of them are fraudulent?
But see, that's why, and I'm sorry because we're coming up on another break, but I'm going to get this point in, is the issue that's the problem that conservatives are going to keep having going forward if they don't think that there's something wrong with their message. If you don't, there's a when a state has a 30-year transition from a red state to a blue state, that doesn't mean that there's voter fraud. What that means is that there's something wrong with the message. After the Democrats lost in 2000, lost in 2004, they went back to the woodshed. They went back into the desert. They came back as the party of a broader base. They started reaching more out to Hispanics and the African American community. Like, they shored up their base, and they actually pushed out some of the more socialist elements that were on the hardcore side of the labor unions. And that's why labor unions have such a problem with Democrats over the last 10 years, is that they've kind of turned their back a little bit on the labor movement. They realize that hardcore...
Let's get back to this issue after the break.
Absolutely. We'll be back in about 3 minutes, and you're listening to Doc and Lefty on Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I'm administrative manager.
I am the senior technician.
From Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
If we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, it's got to be, it's your home.
It's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're going to do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, We guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money-back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me. But is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
Enough said.
Welcome back to Doc and Lefty here on Webcast One Live every Tuesday night from 6 to 7. And thanks again to all of our, they're not our sponsors. They're Webcast One Live sponsors who do a great job. They provide this great studio for us. They give us a forum to talk to you about the issues of the day, the top stories that are on everyone's mind. And before the break, Doc and I were having a discussion about the electoral shifts, the sort of the political winds that blow over the course of years and years and years of political messaging. And the issue that I take when I hear a lot about that, when Democrats are accused of voter fraud or Republicans are accused of voter suppression, is that, well, shouldn't we be looking at the message? You have two elections in a row now, two presidential elections where the Republicans have lost, and you hear some of them, not all of them, I'll grant you that, Doc, crying foul, crying voter fraud, and there are a lot of votes that aren't counted up. Well, from my perspective, and from the liberal side, you got to look at your message first, because study after study has shown that voter fraud is not, that actual false ballots are not a significant problem in this country. But look at the conservative message. Is it reaching? Is it doing the things? Is it appealing to people? Are you gaining electoral advantages because of it? And until conservatives understand that the message that they're giving people has a problem with it, they will not continue to enjoy the electoral successes at the national level.
Well, and I see your point. The problem, if, let's say, I know in Jasper County, during the first election that Obama got elected, it came down to 3 votes in that county. 3. Now, all you need are 2 of those votes to be fraudulent. We're talking about, votes in, if that are going to be contests are going to be very close. That's when it matters. In counties or states where the contest is very close. We just had a long recount with Chris Hagenow and his opponent here in the Des Moines area over, I think it's Clyde and Windsor Heights in that area, and it came down to 29 votes. Well, what if you had 15 votes that are fraudulent, right? Therefore, you changed the election. That's the issue that Republicans keep pointing out. It's widespread, or at least that's what conservatives feel, that it's widespread. We need to address that. I think Matt Schultz is doing a great job with that. Your second point, you and I have had this conversation, and we are in complete agreement. The Republicans need to look at their message. You can't go out and scare those in the middle with, we're not going to focus on jobs, we're going to focus on a woman's uterus. right?
Yep.
Now, I'm going to reiterate, I'm a pro-lifer from conception and natural death. Pro-life all the way. There's a way to fight this that's going to be more successful than, let's say, the way Steve Dace would like us to approach it, or the way Kim Lehman would, or Steve Scheffler. My question to them, whenever I get a chance, is how many babies have you saved with this approach?
Right.
So far, you haven't saved any.
Yep. And I agree with you, Doc. And the thing is, I feel like the main issue here that I keep sort of arguing with, like, well, not as much as I used to, I will say that. But one of the main problems that I have is that now you always hear this bromide about legislating morality and blah, 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 and you can't do it. I said a lot of the same stuff myself. Now, the problem that I have with that phrase is that, well, of course, I mean, a moral code is the basis for all law, and it's external to the law itself. If you didn't have an independent moral authority, whether it's a god or whether it's yourself or whatever it happens to be, like the social contract, looking at you outside the law, telling you, giving you the external motivation to follow the law, you'd never follow the law. Correct? You'd agree with that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that being said, law is always going to have some sort of moral component. So legislating morality, that's just making law, in my opinion.
Yeah.
However,
I agree.
Okay, so but it's the purpose of that law is where conservatives, classical conservatives and classical liberals, we're talking about little c, little l, from the sort of like the founding fathers of these doctrines, it's where we disagree. The classical conservative says the goal of legislation, that when I want to pass a law, my goal for society is to make them as good and as virtuous as possible. And that's a legitimate thing, And so the kind of the figure, if you're going to put up the figure of what a conservative lawmaker would look like, it'd be like a priest, saying, look, this is the virtuous way to go. And that's one way of looking at it. The liberal is a more legalistic approach, says, well, we're not going to focus on making people virtuous. We're going to focus on making people free, like making people. And I'm not trying to hold them up as competing values, because we all want to be good and we all want to be free, but we want to make people give them as much liberty and freedom as possible. So our legislation is going to be sort of couched that way. The figure that you look at in the classical liberal is the sheriff type of figure. Yeah. And so in an abortion debate, the big problem here is, because we're dealing with life and death, is that you have the conservatives who have wound themselves up into this, look, it's evil and it's bad and it's wrong, but the majority of the country feels like, well, hey, listen, it's a liberty issue. And you're infringing on liberties when you enact these onerous anti-choice legislation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's the breakdown.
I get that argument, right? I understand it. I just don't agree with it.
Well,
my thing is, like Ronald Reagan said, everybody who's for abortion has already been born. And, you deal with a lot of what might have been. I talked about this a lot with conservatives, and that is, if you're going to start restricting who can get abortion, all right, you're going to have the infrastructure in place, the social services in place to help these families that cannot cope with another child. I deal with this every day. I mean, every day I deal with it. My point is, you and I have had discussions about, we can agree that we probably shouldn't have an abortion after a certain stage. You and I agree on that. I agree with a lot of Democrats on that. So let's start the laws from the place that Democrats and Republicans agree. And then we can start having discussions about where else it should go. The problem is having a lack of morality still is legislating morality. And that's my perspective on that. The second issue the Republicans lost on is immigration.
Yes, and that's the bigger one, actually.
Yeah, because if you look at how conservative Latinos are, Latinos, the whole Hispanic community, they match Republican outlook on every single issue, with the exception of immigration. And even there, they agree a lot with, we should have a better process. The Republicans have created their own mess with our immigration law. Senator Grassley and Ronald Reagan both voted for our current system, which restricts what they call unskilled labor and to 5,000 visas a year. You can't harvest our crops with cheap Mexican labor with only 5,000 visas. But God help you if you start talking to Republicans about this worker program.
Well, and it's not only that, and that's because, rightly or wrongly, and this is an arguable point, that and you see it a little bit. There's not, and in my opinion, there's not an equivalency here. You hear conservatives all the time talk about the moral failing, like the evil in the system. That illegal immigration is not just sort of wrong and impedes on a liberty interest, but it's morally wrong. That there's some kind of moral failing with people that come into this country illegally, and that's where a lot of and that's where a lot of the folks, the Hispanics and the immigrant sort of advocates get off the train. They say, hey, listen. We can agree with you on a lot of stuff, but when you start talking about it, it's morally wrong for us to come into this country. That's where we're going to have a disagreement. And
this is actually one of the flips that Democrats and Republicans do, because Republicans don't think it's a moral issue. We think it's a legalistic issue. Just like you were talking about earlier about the Democrats wanting more, liberty, right? We view it as an infringement on our liberty.
Well, I was talking about classical politics. I wasn't talking about necessarily the parties, because the parties have flipped constantly throughout their...
Well, I get that.
Yeah.
But for us, it's not a moral issue. If they were here legally, we would welcome them.
But here's the
people.
You're conflating my argument.
It's the Democrats that want to make this into a moral issue.
You're conflating my argument.
What?
You're conflating my argument, because this is what I talk about when I talk about conservatives saying that there's some moral issue with illegal immigration, where one of the policy proposals is sort of the guest worker / amnesty, right? And you hear from conservatives, no amnesty because it's wrong. Not no amnesty because of some policy problem or some liberty interest issue. They don't want to present amnesty because these people broke the law and it's wrong.
I'm going to disagree with you on that.
That's what Steve King says.
Well, because it's wrong because they're not following our rules. I mean, that's what it is. They're not following the rules. It's wrong because they're not following the rules. Not that, they're not really human, right? Because if you really want to look at it, how many immigrants do we have to find in boxcars dead, having been left there for months, right? Mm-hmm. How much more crime, how much more human trafficking are we going to be able to tolerate? On a side note, out here in Maui, they had a conference this weekend over human trafficking, and a person who'd been trafficked had spoken locally. Now, unfortunately, I didn't find out about this till after I was here, but otherwise I would have gone. But my issue is these people, our laws set it up so that people that want to come here, it's almost impossible for them to come here.
That's right.
People that we could use, and then two, we set it up so that they lose in order to get here, and then we go, but because you're here illegally, we're just going to ship you back. And as you know, when I ran for Congress, I had a pretty good scheme together. Even you said, I could see this, right? So the problem is Republicans have to play to their base just as much as Democrats have to play to theirs.
Well, I think
problem really is that both bases need to start coming to an agreement with each other.
Well, I think if there was more agreeing, then everybody would be happier, and I think that we can all, that a reform has to take place, that making immigration into this country, given our current financial situation, especially with our entitlement programs, if we were to somehow kind of make it easier for people to immigrate to America, or at least work in America and pay American taxes, Social Security would take care of itself. Have a younger, more vibrant workforce replace some of the folks that are retiring. But I'm going to make that the last word on the sort of the political problem that we've been talking about the last 45 minutes, and talk about some of the lighter moments from the inauguration. So honestly, Doc, when I hear people making fun and we lost the good doctor. I think he's calling back though. I will say this, and I hope that he can still hear me on his feed in Hawaii. Antonin Scalia's hat. Antonin Scalia's hat. First of all, that was a sort of a replica of Thomas More's hat that you see in all those paintings that the Moore Institute gave him as a present that he wore at the inauguration. It was fantastic. I got to tell you, I'm not a big Scalia fan except when I read his decisions because they're really, really funny and he's really, really smart. But that was a badass looking hat, and I really appreciated it.
It was. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no worries.
For a second.
What did you think of his hat?
I loved his hat. I mean, out here, they couldn't say enough bad things out here in Hawaii because, he's a rather conservative justice.
Well, he has a really tough way of looking at the world, but as far as his fashion statement was concerned, I thought it was fantastic. Also, so what about this controversy with Beyonce lip-syncing the national anthem?
I will tell you that I believe 100% that she lip-synced it because there is not a Marine alive that I know would ever make that accusation unless he was beyond a doubt sure about it.
But go ahead.
Well, because from what I understand, it came from the people that were the band, the Marine Corps band itself said, listen, she was lip-syncing. And I don't think that they were necessarily trying to be critical. They were just saying, well, hey, listen, we played for real, and she didn't. Now, they've issued an apology, because really it's not a big deal. They did their part, right?
Right.
But
I guess my follow-up question to that doesn't matter. And also the logistics of it, I mean, I feel like Yo-Yo Ma's performance in 2008, that was pre-recorded because the logistics of performing outside, especially with something like the national anthem, where if it doesn't, the national anthem is the one song in this country that if you screw the words up or you screw the tune up, everybody who's watching is going to know.
Yes.
I mean, if you don't hit one of the high notes in "Come Sail Away" by Styx, not everybody in the audience is going to understand exactly what happened. But if you screw up the national anthem, everyone's going to know about it. And so,
but the other thing is people are forgiving. I mean, we have a rotten anthem. I mean, that's my opinion. I'd much rather have "America the Beautiful" as our anthem. You have these high notes that nobody can reach.
It's impossible to sing that song unless you're Whitney Houston or somebody.
Yeah, so you have somebody out there singing a song. If they happen to make a mistake, people are going to forgive them.
Yep.
Now I can see that at the inauguration, that might be a big deal. But Kelly Clarkson got there and she didn't lip sync.
She belted well, but see. The thing is, when it comes to, first of all, Beyonce's had that accusation thrown at her before. And so you have to wonder if there was some sort of monitor issue. She was also complaining that her inner ear monitor wasn't working. And I can tell you as a performer myself, if you can't hear yourself sing, you're better off just not doing it. And so what I think may have happened, and we'll never know for sure, what I think may have happened is that she had every live performer who performs a lot outside has a pre-recording done just in that kind of situation, that if there's an emergency situation, your technical equipment goes down, you can't hear yourself, there's some problem with the monitor, you can pop that in and still give a performance, because if it had been pre-recorded and she hadn't been standing there, everyone would have gone ballistic.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on that.
So we're coming close to the end of the hour. Doc, are you going to be able to do this with us next week?
I'm going to do it with you next week, and I'm talking to Ed Fallon to be here on his show on Thursday. We'll be broadcasting from here.
Oh, you're gonna be a guest on Ed's show?
I think so. The good news for Ed, and that is his suit against Boswell was dropped, and then at the same time, Boswell dropped his suit against Ed. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be straightforward. I think Boswell's a tough old campaigner. I think he's kind of slimy. And Ed has always been a straight shooter with me, and he may be a crackpot, but he says what he thinks, and he doesn't say stuff that isn't true,
Well, it looks like on the 17th it got dismissed without prejudice. Well, we're coming up to the end of the hour. Doc, thanks for calling in. You've been listening to Doc and Lefty every Tuesday night from 6 to 7 o'clock here at Webcast One Live. Tune in next week. We're going to be talking about a lot of different things. I'm going to see if I can't talk Doc into being here again on his own show. We're going to be talking about religion. We're going to be talking about politics. We're going to be talking about everything that you're not supposed to talk about in decent company. So join us back here 6 to 7, Tuesday night, next week, January 29th, Webcast 1 Live, Doc and Lefty. My name is Blake Labinas. Have a very good night. Thank you very much.